We have a Doors to Deals podcast, and we're going to start live streaming some of our kind of business bits and some of the discussions that we're seeing and doing and in the real estate marketplace. And just a quick little background for those of you that don't know us. So we're with a company called Three Doors. Jim Manning's my name. I'm one of the co-founders, and we really help people become financially free. Investing in real estate, and we have agents that help people buy and sell houses. We have a lot of neat stuff going on, but today, really what we wanted to talk about was the interest rates that have gone up and the changing environment and what's going on with everything. So Jason and Caleb, why don't you guys introduce yourself really quick, and then we'll get cranking on it.
Sure. Jason Courtney. I have been in real estate for a little over 20 years as an investor. Started out doing custom home building and got into short sales, loan modifications, buying deals from banks. And now I buy and I hold everything that I purchase. I don't sell anything. So that's what I'm currently doing, showing people on how to buy houses creatively. And I think we're going to be talking about that a little bit today, right, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal today. We want to talk about how to buy properties creatively and kind of what the next market that we see is going to happen.
All right. So interest rates. So Caleb, you have kind of like a amortization calculator up, right? What have interest rates been doing, and then how does that impact people when you're buying and selling a house?
Yeah, so just at about a year ago, let me scroll up here just a tad. So at the beginning of 2021, interest rates were at about 2.74. So the average house in St. Louis, home value is around $250. So at 2.74% interest rate, the total cost of that loan, a lot of realtors and a lot of people, they only talk about what you're paying for the house. They don't talk about your payment. They don't talk about the total cost. On a $250,000 house over 30 years at 2.74, the total cost is $366,000. Today, rates are in the fives, some at sixes. So 5.5%. So this is 1 year difference. That same $250,000 house, over the course of the loan, will cost you $511,000 at 5.5%. That's what we're going to talk a lot about today, because that is so crazy different from a lot of people that bought a year ago that they were buying at a certain price, and now you're buying at higher prices, but you're really paying even more because of interest rates.
So we're going to talk one more time. It's $511,000 compared to what?
Yeah, so at 2.74, it was $367,000. So you're looking at a difference of $145,000 roughly over the course of 30 years that you're paying more for a house that you're buying today than a year ago.
And so we're seeing this a decent amount. We had somebody come to me say, hey, I'm building a new house. Interest rates are going up. I can't afford it anymore. And it's a lot of people are thinking okay, because of this changing environment, maybe I can't move. Maybe I don't have any options. And this is to kind of date ourselves. Real estate's cyclical. It goes in cycles, and we were in a similar marketplace back in the 1980s. And what happened in the 1980s was interest rates rose up to 15+%, right? Caleb, I think you have the chart up right now. How high did they end up going up?
Yeah, so it looks like January of 1982 and February is kind of the peak at 17.6% interest rate, starting out the year of 1982. And they had risen, if you go back just to 1978, the annual average in 1978 was 9.6%. So in a small 4-year time span, interest rates jumped 8%. And then if you go back even a little bit further, interest rates were down in the 8s just in 77 and 76. So what happened then can't happen in that scale, but we could certainly see interest rates get above 10% possibly. And it's really, really crazy. So there was a crash in 1982, which is what caused the rates to come down. But let's look at just some numbers real quick on what it costs of a loan on a $250,000 house at 17% is. 30-year cost is $1.283 million.
Yeah, how'd you like to buy a house on your credit card? That's what that's like.
Yeah, it is literally exactly like that. Just absolutely mind-blowing to me that and everybody probably in 1978 when rates shot up to 9% were like, oh, they're not going to go any higher. We don't need to worry about this. And then over 4 years, everybody was sitting there like, holy cow, the market completely changed. And you guys know what's so crazy is real estate still sold in 1982. Transactions still happen. They just happened at a different level and they happened differently. And that's a bit what we're going to talk about today. So we can start helping you guys prepare for what might be the next market.
Yeah. So what options do we have, guys? Like if you want to still buy at the lower interest rate, like what can we do? What do you guys think?
I know a few. So ultimately, we might as well just jump into what we're going to talk about today because we think this is what's going to make all the difference in the real estate world. And understanding exactly what it is are going to be set apart from those that are clueless or don't even understand how these transactions happen. But back in the 80s, most people purchased their home subject to the existing financing that was already in place because it had a much lower rate. If you look at a HUD statement or your closing docs, if you bought a house recently, Section 203 says buying homes subject to their existing liens and mortgages. This is something that's still on our closing documents today. It's been on there since the 80s, but there's lots of caveats on how that's actually going to work. So we can talk about that here in a little bit. But ultimately, assuming mortgages that are already in place is the future of what's going down in real estate. So if I'm an agent and I'm working with a buyer and I say, hey, let's go out and buy this house. Well, guess what? The rates now are 6.5%. But you can't afford that house anymore. Now you're looking at a house for $100,000 less than what you originally went into the market for. So you're done. You're dead in the water. But the agent said no, that they can talk to the homeowner, and if they have an FHA or a VA loan and some other loans also, that their buyer could assume at a much lower rate they're still in the market. They don't have to leave the market to buy the house. They can stay exactly where they were when they entered the market, and they can purchase that house at last year's rates. Or, depending on how old that loan is, assuming a loan that's already had 10 years paid off on it, oh my goodness. Did you imagine what that could do for your buyer if you knew how to do that? I mean, these are all amazing things that could happen for your buyer and for the seller, right? Because when the market shifts and people get out of the market, there's less people to buy your house now. All those people that were looking at $500,000 houses are now having to look at $300,000 houses, and you just missed out on all your buyers. So this is a way to help everybody and keep the industry moving, just like it did in the 80s that Caleb mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah, so really, I mean, the ramifications are you can buy a house for a fraction of what maybe some other people can buy that don't know this strategy, and you can sell your house for potentially more money, because if no one can get a loan and afford your house anymore because interest rates are too high, let's say it's worth $600,000, maybe you have to sell it for less because of interest rates. Well, this is a way that you could still sell it for $600,000 and pass along savings to the buyer of your property.
Well, let's rephrase what you just said. You said you're going to buy it for a fraction. So for anyone who's listening, the fraction that Jim was just talking about was the terms, not the purchase price, but the terms would be a fraction of what the market terms are now, meaning the interest rate that you would then be able to buy it for is less than market interest rate, because we just talked about the interest rates going up right now, and this is a better term. So we're talking about terms with regards to a fraction of what it would cost.
Speaking on terms, so I was just running a couple numbers over here, and we've been talking about, buying payments and things like that. A payment that you would have gotten in a year ago at 2.74% for a $500,000 house is $2,038 a month. A payment at 6% on a $340,000 house is $2,038 a month. That is a $160,000 price difference just from what interest rates were then to what they're going to now. this is so important to start talking about. I'm so glad we're doing this. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. I mean, literally, the house is twice as expensive, even though the purchase.
And actually, it's less than a year, right? This just happened 2 months ago, right? So this is the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes in the real estate world, right? And you have to be able to adjust. And I think one of the things that sets Three Doors and agents in the know apart is that these things don't phase us. We continue to do deals over and over again and help our sellers and our buyers achieve their goal of either buying or selling a piece of real estate.
Yeah, no, it's all about being a true advisor, and that's why we're talking about this more and more. Because if you can truly advise your client on how to get into an interest rate at 2.7%, what do you think they're going to do? They're literally going to tell everyone about you. Everyone, like, dude, this realtor, he helped me get a house at 3%. Everyone's like, how? And they're going to have to come to you. You're going to get so much business. The people that get ahead of this and learn this, I mean, it's going to be game changing for some people's businesses coming into the next couple of years.
Yeah. So Jason, you just had yesterday, you were working on a VA deal. So let's kind of, can you tell that story?
Sure. So I had an agent contact me last week and said that she has a deal that has a VA loan on it. And I was trying to work a deal out with her, and we were unable to come to terms on a price that I thought was fair to where we could make money as an investment. So I was thinking of a buddy of mine who was looking for a house and is also a vet. And he says, Jason, we're not looking for a house anymore because the interest rates just went up past 6% and we can't afford what we want. We might as well stay where we are because our current rate is, 2.75. And, we only owe another, I think he said 60,000 on our house. And so we're just going to stay here until things change. And I said, well, what if you could assume a VA loan at 2.75, which is exactly where you are right now? Would you go get back into the market and buy this house? And he said, well, of course I would, So I just connected his agent and the agent that has the listing and told them to work on the assumption. And then that way the seller gets to sell for the price he wants to sell it for. And my friend, who's a vet, gets to assume that loan. And let me give you the even better news: a loan that has 8 years already paid in interest on it. So not only is he getting that 2.7% rate, the majority of the interest that we pay on a 30-year note, even though it's a VA loan, is front-loaded with interest. So my friend is not only buying it at a low rate that he can't get today with a VA loan that's new. He doesn't have to pay 8 years of interest that the original seller had already paid. And the seller is happy for him because they're both vets, right? So they're like, dude, this is like a win-win for both people. Both agents got, paid on the deal, and it's going to be fantastic. It hasn't, completely closed yet. And I'm not sure these agents even know how to do it. But I know both agents personally, and I'm going to help them. So my buddy's going to wind up getting a house that he couldn't afford any other way. So,
all right. So one of the things you said you were talking to the seller and you offered a price that you thought would be reasonable for us, and that price didn't work for the seller, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the reason I want to bring this up is because what is the single biggest objection that we face when dealing with sellers?
How much money am I going to make?
Well, I'll go one step further. It's about money, yes, but is it about how much money you're going to make, or what is specifically the thing that they care about?
Net in their pocket.
Then in their pocket tomorrow, right? Or today, I guess, since we're going to talk about tomorrow, but today. So what am I bringing home? So everyone is fixated on the purchase price because the purchase price is the term to then give me what I'm going to make today, right? So how do we combat that with sellers?
Yeah, I mean, talking about getting sellers to think about net or total net over the course of the time period, in my opinion, is super valuable compared to every seller thinks about like, what am I going to sell my house for? What am I selling my house for? And Open Doors doing a great job of giving these people these crazy high prices with tons of fees to beat them down. But when you start talking to sellers in terms of net, you're going to win at a higher level as well. Net take home. How much are you going to make over X amount of time?
So it's price, right? Price is the biggest obstacle that we have to face, whether it's a buyer, whether it's a seller. Everyone is fixated on price, right? Very few people think about the terms of a deal. Jason,
Right.
have you ever offered over 100% of fair market value for a property?
Multiple times, of course,
And why?
because the terms of the loan allowed me to do so. That I was assuming.
So then what did you end up doing? You bought what was the most you've ever paid for one home?
I've paid about 105% of its fair market value before.
Okay. And what did you end up doing with that property?
I filled it with a lease purchase tenant. I still own it today.
Okay. And how much is your loan to value roughly now?
Oh, probably like 70% LTV at this point. Now the market's really gone up in the last 2 years, which has really helped me, right? So you paying 105% 4 years ago, which is probably when I bought that house. At first I was scared, to do so, but look where I sit today. I just refinanced that house and cashed out 60 grand.
Okay. So let's just assume for a second that the market hasn't appreciated as it has the last couple of years. Let's say it's just appreciated the normal 4%, as historic trends have always suggested, 4% or somewhere close to there. If it had gone 4%, you've owned it for 4 years, would you still be happy with your purchase from 4 years ago?
Of course, I'd be at a 90% LTV. I depreciated the asset by, 27.5% of what I paid for it every single year, even if I had no cash flow, right? So with no cash flow, it still made sense for me. However, that particular property cash flow is $700 a month for me. And
So
it
you
has
bought it-
since the day I bought it.
You bought it for 105% of fair market value, and you were able to cash flow $700 per month day one.
Yep, because the rate was 3.25%, and I charged my tenant buyer 6.5%.
So, it's interesting to even do an extreme on this. And I didn't know this for the first 10 years of my career. I would pay $300K for a house that's worth $200,000, depending on terms, right? If I was buying a house that I said, literally, I want you to own or finance it, I'm going to pay you 0% interest. And my exit strategy is I'm going to hold on to it as just a normal rental for 30 years. I'm buying that house cheaper than if I bought the house for $200,000 with a 5% interest rate, because that $200,000 over 30 years, that house isn't costing me $200,000. It's costing me, Caleb, what is that about? 500,000 or what is that?
Give me those numbers again. Sorry.
Yeah, so 200,000 over 30 years at a 5% interest.
200,000 at 5%. 386,000 over the term of 30 years.
Yeah, so and 300 is an extreme, right? But I'm still getting that house for $86,000 less over time than I am if I'm paying an interest rate on it. So these interest rates, people think they get so fixated on the purchase price, but really it's the total cost of the property. And when you're borrowing money, it's not 300,000; it's 300,000 plus whatever the bank's making on the property, right?
Over the length of the loan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
I don't know who's watching all this. I know it's kind of live and it's, going out, but if there's anyone out there like my friend who left the market because interest rates went up, call us. You know what I mean? We'll get you into a house at the same rate, probably better. Like I think about my buddy who was going to go out and get a 30-year VA loan, now has a 22-year loan with a 2.7% rate, right? All because he just assumed the note that the guy had, right? It was already in place. So not only are we getting you in at the same, let's say the same rate it was before rates went up, because the loan has been paid off for a few years, you're at a much better position than you were 2 months ago when rates were down at 3%. Does that make sense? Or I don't know if I'm being clear about that, because I understand how it works, and I forget that it's a more complicated process than most people can process. But
yeah, but I mean, that goes back to a lot of what we talk about at Three Doors all the time. It's not the who, it's not the how, it's the who. Like, you don't have to know how to do this. You just have to know the person that can help you do it, which in our case is Jason.
yeah, and if you have a house to sell, right, call us. We're ready to, help get you through this crazy rate wave that we're riding.
This
it's
is going to
easy for
be
us.
incredibly helpful and we don't know when real estate values are going to plateau, but I can promise everyone on here
It's coming.
They can't go up 10% every year. I think we're going to have a great year this year, but next year, the year after that, we're going to see a plateau in real estate values. And what happens if people that paid 100% today, then 2 years have to move? They have to change jobs, and their house is only worth 4%, 3% more than what they paid for it. How are they going to sell it? They're going to have to do a subject to deal. It's going to have to happen. So making sure that we can educate everyone across the board on that is going to help everybody in the long run. It's going to be super valuable. And then we want to get to this early. Nobody else is talking about this, which is blowing my mind. I was talking to Market Center yesterday, and they're like, no, we have no trainings on this. Like, why? Like, agents need to be getting trained on subject to and assumptions at a high level.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing. Like on 2008 rolled around, and so Ryan was doing short sales in 2005 or 2006, and he was doing them a couple of years before. But then at a certain point, 2008, 2009, 2010, every single agent knew about short sales, because that was like, you're selling half the houses that were out there were selling on short sale. It seemed like it was a massive market, and where the market's heading right now is in these subject twos and kind of assuming loans, and because that's going to be the way that people can still move and afford them.
What's really crazy, and I didn't know this until the other day, and I was talking to Jim about this. So my dad started buying real estate in the 90s. And I was asking just the other day, like, what was it like when you bought some of your first properties? And we've talked a lot as I've grown up about that, but maybe I forgot to have it. I don't know. My dad started telling me, he's like, I bought $1 million of property in the 90s, which in the 90s, that's a ton of real estate. I mean, like a ton. And he's like, I bought it all, no money out of pocket. And I'm like, wait, Dad, you were buying on terms? Like when I was a baby, and you didn't like tell me my whole life growing up that I could buy real estate on terms. And so I had a little bit like shame on me moment. And I bought a couple houses on terms when I first started, but my dad was doing this in the 90s at a high level when everybody else was doing it. And I mean, he set himself up for massive success throughout his life because he bought real estate on terms, and it helped the sellers too, because that was the way that people did business back then. And then me, which like, I like to think I'm halfway decent at real estate. Here I am building a big portfolio throughout the 2000s. And I barely even asked my dad how he got into real estate. And I'm sitting here paying cash for everything when I could have been buying more on terms. But because that wasn't the market that was in our mind, all we thought about was short sales. The conversation never came up. We need to interview him on here soon, get his little story. But yeah, he was buying multifamilies, guys, from landlords at 100% of value on terms, just having the right deal set up.
Does he still own those properties today, or did he sell them off? Or?
He sold most of them off last year, so he cashed out at like the top kind of ish of like throughout the fall and summer of last year, and did really, really well. And now he has his house paid off. He has a nice nest egg, and he did all that with no money out of pocket in the 90s. Just managed the rentals, and it's essentially funded his life for the last 20 years. We need him on here because he's got some cool stories to tell. We were just sitting down having a couple of drinks, and he's telling us, like, Dad, I can't believe I didn't know this. I feel so silly. But everything comes back full circle. And, maybe eventually we could see a crash and the short sales come back, but it's definitely going to buying on terms. We're doing them right now for people that bought a year ago that overpaid. We have some deals that we're doing that way.
So I don't know if you guys found it interesting. Internally, we've been talking about these types of deals. You just found out, your dad did them. We talk about them, right? And yet there's still this mindset of, can I do a deal? So the interesting part is yesterday at our team meeting, the question was asked, after presenting a deal, would you do this deal? And this is to our internal team, and everyone's been, we've been preaching creative financing deals for a year plus, and not every single person raised their hand. So, then it's, well, why? What's the fear? What's the unknown as to why you wouldn't do this deal? So, the reason I bring this up is because we've been literally training on this for a year. Your dad knew about it, right? And didn't teach you. And yet, there are people that will listen to this, think it's a great idea, and not act whatsoever, even though we're going into that market. So if you have some type of fear, what is that fear? Is it the unknown? Is it because you don't feel like you can do a deal?
I think a lot of it's the unknown. They feel like they can't do it. They don't know how to structure it. I said it earlier. It's the who, not the how. You just got to call Jason Courtney, and he's going to teach you how to do it. I mean, to me, that's why I think everyone's not doing it. That's why I didn't do it, because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to structure those. Luckily, Jason has spent a lot of time with me over the last year.
And so the crazy part, and I agree with you, I do think that it's because people don't know how to do the deals. These deals, while they sound complicated, are very simple. They really are.
Yeah, I
People
always
try.
tell people that everybody is in one of three situations, right? They either own their home free and clear, they have a mortgage with some equity, or they have a mortgage with no equity, right? So as soon as you figure out what that is, structuring a creative financing deal is very easy, right? So it's just a matter of talking to people, finding out what their situation is and how you can help them. And we can structure a deal for every scenario. There's not a single house on the market today or off the market that we can't put a deal together that makes the seller happy and the buyer.
And a lot of the times it's going to make the buyer way happier now because they're going to get in those 2, 3, 4% rates that they can't even touch anymore.
Yeah, especially right now. But even if rates were the same, creative financing is by far a better way to go because of the principal pay down that happens at the beginning of a loan, right? So even if rates didn't change, this is still a better. My buddy now has a 22-year loan instead of a 30-year loan. If interest rates stayed the same, wouldn't that be a better deal, right? So anyway, Ryan's right. They're not complicated if you understand the seller situation and how this can help them.
Well, I think this is why it's so important to work with an experienced real estate advisor, an experienced realtor that knows things like this, right? And if you are an experienced realtor and you don't know it, well, surround yourself with people that do know, that can kind of help show you the ways. And I mean, the ramifications, guys, on this, and sometimes realtors will be like, or homeowners will be like, oh, do I really want to pay you a 3% commission? Are you worth it? I mean, guys, we're talking about potentially saving on the buy side, potentially in the story that Jason just shared, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, this is not small chunk of change here. We're talking about, potentially a 3% commission that could, you could open up a window, open up a door to save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars with this strategy.
How easy is it to go ask for more commission when you tell someone you saved them 150 grand? Like, I mean, let's not just talk about like the 3%. Let's talk about how you can make more. I'm on the other side of real estate. I'm pushing commissions up. I'm not trying to race to the bottom. I want to push up. So going to your client and saying, I saved you 150 grand, I want an extra $5,000. To me, it's a no-brainer because you did that. Someone else can't. You just have to get the education. We got to quit racing commissions to the bottom or we're all going to be out of business. And this is the first step of how you can beat out the open doors, the offer pads. There's so many ways to be better than them. You just have to get
the 3 doors.
Yeah, you got to have the 3 doors.
I mean, I'm serious. I'm starting to look at those guys as competition because also we're better than they are at what we're doing. And we're treating people fairly. Some of the stories I've heard with Open Door are really embarrassing. And I wouldn't want to be affiliated with them if I was an agent.
No, yeah, I don't want to get on a tangent today about that. But no, let's. I mean, should we go over some more deal stories and talk about some different ways we've seen this structure that have helped people?
Sure. I mean, we can even go into what I brought up yesterday at the meeting, which was, and we've had people recently. So, because of the environment we're in, sellers often don't want to sell or don't feel they can sell currently without buying, yet they can't buy because it's so competitive that they can't write a non-contingent offer. So there is a solution out. There's other solutions out there for sure, and there's other companies that have come up with solutions. And we have literally been brought this 3 times in the last month to 2 months. And what if you were able to purchase a property from a homeowner for effectively the closing costs and nothing more down? And you solve their problem of having to sell their home, yet they're able to continue to stay in their home at the exact same price that they previously were. So how we've solved this ourselves is it was a month ago now. A month ago, Jason, you've been working with this particular seller for over a year or so. Ridge
Long
Forest.
time.
Yeah. So a nice guy. He was looking in Colorado. He was looking in Florida. He was looking here in St. Louis. He was moving. He just didn't know necessarily where. And the market, as competitive as it is, despite the fact that he did not need to write a contingent offer realistically. However, he did because he intends to pay for his property via cash. So he needed to sell his house. Right?
Right. Yep. So we went in and made a deal with him that we would pay a certain amount of money for his house. We would go ahead and close on it right away, and he could stay there. And a week before he moves out, we write him a check for the full amount. He loved it because he owned the house free and clear. All he had to pay was utilities and taxes and insurance. So he got to stay there for 3 or 4 months. He has found a house now, and he is moving to Florida. But he could have stayed there for another 6. And it wouldn't have cost him or us any more money. And both parties were, total win-win in a situation like this. Basically, we're talking about a rent back, right? So we're putting ourselves in the position to buy these homes so that the seller can be in a position to go out and buy another home at any time with no pressure. And it's huge. It's really huge.
So
it's
you
going to
mentioned
keep happening.
On that one, since he owned it outright, he wasn't paying a mortgage, yet he was still responsible for when he was renting, when he was occupying the property, for taxes and insurance, correct?
Taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance.
Yeah. So he was still living in there. He no longer owned it. We technically own the property. He sold it to us via owner financing. And as you mentioned, just to recap, 1 week prior to his next sale, when he buys in Florida, he is getting the full amount of what he sold the property, or I'm sorry, what the loan amount to us was. The seller
That's
carried.
right. Yep. It's getting wired to him, I believe, on the 28th of this month, and he's moving on the 30th.
And
So that's one seller rent back, if you will.
But let's assume he didn't own it free and clear, right? The deal is exactly the same. He would stay there. He'd continue to pay his mortgage, and then we would do the assumption, right, on the 28th, we would make the next payment, and he'd be gone, right? So just because he owned it free and clear doesn't change this structure at all. It's just this deal happened to be free and clear. But whether they have a mortgage or not, zero, they can stay there for the same exact amount. In fact, Ryan, we're doing that on Northmore, right? That guy has a mortgage, and he's being allowed to stay there at whatever his current expenses are. So there's no additional fees. There's no real rent back, if you will. And then when he moves into his other house, we cash his old loan out.
So I think the biggest thing, guys, on this is, we're talking a lot of deal structures and really some advanced strategies. We were adding up. I was looking at the slide the other day. I think we were trying to add up all the deals. I think there's like 5,000 plus deals between the four of us now over the years, or whatever the heck it is. The number's crazy.
Wow.
But you don't have to, like, if you're an agent that's newer, or like even an experienced agent that like it feels like we're just talking a different language. The good news is that you don't really have to know all this stuff. You can reach out to us and we can kind of put the deal together for you, and you can provide the same service to your clients without having to even understand a lot of this. Like we can take care of it for you, right? So
You know, Jim, I think Joe Jordan and Hawk are a really good example. They had no idea what buying houses creatively meant, and they just went out and did it. And they didn't do it; we did it for them, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't. They trusted us. They went out, made the offers. We got those deals executed, and they're both on their way to financial freedom.
Hawk joined real estate a year ago, and it took him 4 or 5 months to do his first deal, and now he's on it. Like he's clearly on the path to financial freedom. Adding something else into here. So yeah, any of you guys can reach out to us. I'm super active on Facebook. This is all over Facebook. Caleb Davis. I'm tagged in the comments. So message me if you want help on these deals. The second thing that I think is really interesting we should talk about is only 7% of real estate agents own investment property. That stat came from Rebecca Rose at KW. Was the one who told me 7%. And you know, the reason most of them don't do it is because they don't know how to structure these deals. We're here to help you guys learn how to do that. We want to help you guys own investment property. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask us, because I think that number should be 25%, 50%. It's not
Caleb,
hard.
do you think more agents would buy it if they knew they could do it with no money or very little money out of their pocket?
Absolutely. I think a lot of agents want it. So there's multiple reasons why agents don't own real estate. The number one reason is they think they have to be a landlord, which is completely false. I have almost 50 properties. I'm not a landlord. I haven't seen most of my properties in probably a year. I don't take tenant calls. You don't have to do that. Ryan and Jim, I know for sure don't. You don't need to do tenant calls. That's the number one reason. Number two is they don't have the money. A lot of them, because the average income in real estate is $25,000 a year. We have deals where we make $50,000. So like you guys could double your income off one deal by being in investment real estate. So the financial aspect's really hard because a lot of agents are starving and they don't know. Number three, they don't know they can buy real estate with no money out of pocket. And you guys are you're the first person that gets called. Before somebody calls a wholesaler or they call Open Door, they typically call an agent. They call one of their friends. They say, hey, do you know an agent I can talk to? But what happens is that agent goes out and says, no, I can't help you. It goes on to a wholesaler who makes a bunch of money, or it goes to Open Door who makes a bunch of money. You guys are the first person that gets called. If you knew how to structure these deals, you could keep these rental properties, make your clients happier, and not have to let them go down the road doing a bunch of research. I mean, really.
I also think about people, Caleb, who are considering selling their house to a wholesaler, right? And when they find out that they don't have to sell it at 60 cents on the dollar, they could sell it to us at 80, 90, in some cases, like me, 105%, right? So, there's better opportunities out there for
when we talk
people.
about those like 195 and 105%, that's with no fees. So one thing that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to selling a house, it's like 9 to 10% when you figure commission, the work you need to do. If you could buy your client's house from them at 100% with zero fees, how happy is your client? How much are they referring you? How much more business are you going to get? How many other retail buyers, retail sellers? How many other opportunities of that property do you get? What does that do for you? How does that change your life? How does that change your family's life? Think about these things and why you should start asking these questions about learning how to do creative deal structures, because it could literally change the trajectory of your life. Sorry, I love my soapboxes. I get on them every so often, but it's important. And I think people need to think about that more.
Okay, so elaborating a little bit more on your soapbox for those people who aren't in our weekly meeting, one of the things we actually discuss every single week is a path to financial freedom. So Caleb, elaborate on that so that people who are listening can understand how quickly it is actually achieved. It actually is to achieve that goal.
Yeah, no. So you have to have a plan. So you have to have a plan. That's the first step. If you don't have a plan of financial freedom, you'll never get there. But before you can do a plan, you have to have a goal. So starting out, you have to figure out, what is my cost of living? What does that cost? I need to get a number set so I know what I have to hit so I can become financially free. then you can figure out a plan. For me personally, I've doubled in the last year by doing creative deal structures, doubled my passive income in the last year by learning how to do these. And I was investing in real estate for about 6 years before this. So 1 year I doubled it. If I had known a lot of this stuff 6 years ago, I probably would be retired on a beach in Tahiti right now. But why it's important to me that people need to be financially free, I talk about the big why a lot. So I think everyone on this earth has a really, really big purpose, a really big thing that they can conquer and achieve. But you can't do that until your financial security is taken care of. You can't live your full purpose in life. There might be somebody listening to this call that could cure cancer if they just had their financial security taken care of. And it might not be that. It might be, helping out a few families or, raising the best children. But living your best life to the best purpose, to what you were put on this earth to do, I don't believe can fully happen until you're financially secure.
So, wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. And Jim, specifically for one of the slides that we go through, for someone listening who's an agent who maybe does, I don't know, let's say they do 15 to 20 deals per year. How can they become financially free inside of 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you end up buying 6 of these per year, so one every other month, then it ends up being about $150,000 a year passive income in the 5th year. So that's it's over $10,000 a month.
So super simple. So somebody has to buy one every other month for 5 years or 4 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
And then they'll have how much in passive income?
About $150K a month. Yeah.
$150,000 per month.
Or I'm sorry, per year.
Per year.
Sorry, right? I went into the why that's important.
Whoa.
But yeah, it's so simple.
I love it. No, I mean you have to know the why for sure. One thing that also I appreciate you mentioning, which we did go over, is having a good foundation, having a good basis of what do you actually spend and what is financial freedom. Like you can't say I want to be financially free without actually knowing what that number is. So doing the homework of what is your expenses and what's truly needed and what's a want, what's a need. The other thing that we've been discussing recently is we're potentially in a a recession right now.
We are in a recession.
Okay, we are in a recession. So for anyone who's listening who doesn't think we are, that's perfectly fine. You can disagree with us. And we would encourage everyone to start looking at their expenses. Once, try to eliminate them. Needs, you need to keep those. So, tighten up what you have. If we're wrong, what's the worst thing that could happen? You save some money. If we're right, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, you're in a better position.
You don't go out of business.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial to have a plan/vision, right? And I think that if you're serious about becoming financially free, you will get serious about cutting your expenses, because the lower your expenses are, the sooner you become financially free. And I'm not saying you can't have those things back. I mean, I sold my Harleys, I sold my Corvette, I sold my house. I did everything to get my expenses down as low as I possibly could. And guess what? I have all those things and more now, right? So I got rid of them for a time so that I could become financially free and focus on my business. And as my business grew, I probably bought more stuff than I should have. You're right. And I'm, getting rid of some of that stuff again. Because one thing you'll find out when you start buying a bunch of stuff requires your attention and time and maintenance, or you're going to pay someone else to do it. So most of the stuff I have, I don't even use. And so, but you get your expenses down so that you can become financially free quicker, and you go back to that lifestyle. And then once you get to the lifestyle you're happy with, you make sure that your business is growing to that level and then more. And then you can start doing good in the world outside of just, having the lifestyle that you want. And doing good is, I can't begin to tell you how much that's a game changer for you spiritually, physically, emotionally. When you're not focused on yourself and you're focused on others, big things really, happen, so Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to get on the soapbox.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about, trying to unlock for people, right? That's
Yeah.
our 10-year target: 250 agents and their clients financially free over the next 10 years. Kind of unlocking that for people. All right, so let's recap really quick. We've talked about a lot. So the market of the moment, kind of like what we see moving forward, are these subject to and kind of like assumption deals. And it's the opportunity, if you're an agent, this opportunity to help advise your client and save them literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, both on a buy and a sell. And if you are so you can look pretty good with your client, right? If you are a homeowner, obviously you're the one saving all that money and being able to make a move that maybe you otherwise thought that you couldn't. So if anybody needs any help on that, just reach out to our team. So we have a website, 3doors.com, that you can kind of go to, and there's a phone number there for the office. Caleb, did you want to give people your number too?
I'll give my number out, 618-401-8198. Call or text me. I'd love to have a conversation and see if we can't help you guys out.
Yeah, we're here to help. We're here to be a resource, and I think that this is, like, if you look back at what happened historically in the 80s, this was very, very commonplace. The market of the moment became short sales in 2008. So it's something that is the opportunity, if you're to get ahead of this and to kind of be on the leading edge of this as the market shifts and this becomes a commonplace a way to do deals. So.
And I just want to say this again, even if rates didn't change, learning these techniques could save your clients a small fortune and make you a lot of money, right? So yes, this is exactly the move that you need to be making if you're an agent and you're trying to help people right now, because it's coming. But even if it wasn't, you still need to learn these techniques, and Three Doors can teach them to you, right? We're available to help people. We have a goal of helping 250 people become financially free, and we would love to have you on that list of 250 people. We don't let anybody on that list. You're going to have to meet certain criteria. We have some non-negotiables, but we want you on that list, and we want to help you. So what are you waiting on, right? Get after it.
The best time to start investing was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for your guys' time today. We really appreciate you. We do a podcast just like this every Wednesday. You can check us out on any major podcast area at doorsofdeals.com.